So I actually wasn't going to do this topic at first, but I felt after some debate that I had something to say, so I'm just going to put this disclaimer out here right now. I'm asexual, so if I misunderstand something or don't understand what the intentions are, it's because I don't feel those things that normal people usually do. So yeah, full disclaimer on this. This might just be a case of I'm not getting it. So, with that out of the way, Yandere Simulator, whatever it's called. It's a weird game, and everyone's talked about it. So if you're all looking for someone to talk about the dev or talk about the game itself, then you're not going to be satisfied because other people have already done that. No, instead, what I'm going to talk about is the core problem that's at the core of Yandere Simulator and really all porn games, which is what I like to call the erotic game paradox. Basically, the erotic game paradox is this. If you're making porn, then the gameplay is either unneeded or actively intrusive to the experience of getting off. If you're making a game, then the porn is either unneeded or actively intrusive to playing the game. Again, if you focus on having both, then one of them is going to be intruding on the other, and if you just make it so simple that it doesn't even really need to be there, then again, why did you put it there? When I think about Yandere Simulator, what I see is, if it wants to be Hitman, then the porn and erotic game parts of it aren't needed, because it is meant to be an erotic game. It has elements of erotic games, and it's clearly the personal fetish project of the creator. So if it's meant to be porn, it's meant to be consumed as an erotic experience, then all of the gameplay, which is super in-depth, take away from that. But if it's meant to be a game, then all of the erotic parts are just kind of in the way and actively taking you out of the whole focusing on gameplay bit. Think about the first Witcher game, where there's a running mini game of you sleeping with lots of women so that you can get the cards with their pictures on it. There's no real reason for this because, again, it's not a part of the game, and it's not meant to be porn, so why is it there? Or you have the alternative where in God of War 2, there's a minigame where you sleep with Aphrodite, complete with minigame, but it's such a non-entity, why is it there? Now, there are other games that try to make it work. Things like, I guess Unipop is a good example of like a popular game that focuses on sleeping with lots of women, but the problem is that, again, there's gameplay, but if it's meant to be porn, then the gameplay is not really facilitating you getting off. And if it's meant to be a game, then why is there random porn in there? My main point is that porn is meant to be consumed a certain way, and games are meant to be consumed a certain way, and those ways of consuming them are opposing each other. It would be kind of like if you were trying to say, well, you know, we can cook, we can drive a car, but you can't do both at the same time, because you kind of need the skills and the focus to do one or the other. Now, there are two exceptions to this rule, which I think have both embodied the paradox, but also sort of circumvented it. The first are gacha games, which are basically just, in many cases, cheesecake, where it's barely any gameplay, and then there's just lots of picture of anime girls that they found on like Gelbero or something, and I don't get it, because I don't understand the appeal, I suppose. Because, again, paradox kicks in. Like, I understand that, like, that's the best way to balance it, where it's not really porn, it's just meant to be sort of erotic without, again, being porn. The other situation, the other case, I guess you could say, are visual novels, which, because there's already a long-standing history of novels being erotic, and you can have as little gameplay as possible, it can still be porn without needing to worry too much about the gameplay aspect. Because the most gameplay that they actually need to do is just making choices. You end up with basically choose your own adventure porn games, which I guess works, but again, it comes down to the paradox where it's not really a game anymore. It circumvents the paradox by not really being a game. It's a visual novel. So again, it doesn't really solve the problem, which again brings us back to Yandere Simulator, which to me, it, it feels like the kind of thing that was never going to work. I don't know if that makes sense. It feels like something that can't balance the paradox, and so because it can't be one or the other, it ends up as neither. I will say the one other thing I don't understand is that I don't understand the fandom around it, because there are already porn games out there. Like, people already make them, and they're already, like, more competent, ostensibly. They're on Steam. Like, the people who made games like Artificial Academy and stuff, those are on Steam. Like, those guys, like, they're major developers. They do things. Like, why would you put all of this onto a guy like why would you attach all your hopes to a guy like that, is I guess what I'm getting at. And to get a little off topic, there's a thing about the concept of the yandere that always kind of bugs me, which is that it doesn't work. Like, it's very specifically meant for a very specific kind of guy. The yandere is not sexy, except to guys who... It's basically for guys whose kink is that women are hyper into them, where a woman is so into them that she's violent. Because this doesn't work in reverse. Okay? It doesn't work as a kink or as a fetish in reverse. Because a woman who has a man that's into her, who is so into her is that they're violent, is not a kink. That's a horror movie. There's a reason why the yandere concept is specifically about a woman being into a man, because it's focused on the Japanese ideal of, well, normal women are submissive and demure, and so this one's not. This one is so hyper-aggressive and into a guy. And it's something that it's weird to me, because it doesn't feel like there's any world where this is erotic. It doesn't feel like this is so, like, if you were going to use something that's erotic, the concept of the hyper stalkerish violent woman does not strike me as an erotic fantasy. And it doesn't work in reverse, because women have plenty of examples of hyper stalkish, violent, creepy dudes. Probably the same dudes who are into yandere, ironically. But again, it doesn't feel like it's erotic. And so it kind like, I can understand you could do a game like this. Like, you could do a game where you play a yandere, but I don't think you could do one. I don't think you can make a yandere game where it's erotic. Like, you could do a Hitman style game where you play a yandere, where you basically play a insane, violent stalker who systematically murders people. Like, you could do that. You could make a game and that would work, but it wouldn't work as like an erotic game. It would have to be a horror game. Like, you would have to make it like the story beats and the emotional beats of a game like that would be a horror game. It would not be erotic. You might be able to draw porn of it and of the characters, but there's no way to make that work without it being horrifying. And again, maybe it's because I'm asexual and I'm just not getting it. It's entirely possible that I don't understand the natural attraction to this kind of thing, and so I'm not the person who should be talking about it. But I can't help but think that Yandere Simulator is not that different from a game like Hatred. For those of you who don't remember, Hatred is like a super juvenile, at least in like the way it portrays mass shootings. Hatred is a game where you play as a mass shooter, essentially, which isn't that strange, but it's framed in such a way and is so over the top that, and like so intentionally attempting to be grimdark, that it comes off like parody almost, and like you can't. It feels the same way as something like Yandere Simulator to me, because it feels like someone who is not mature is trying to do something that they think is mature. So Yandere Simulator feels like a game that is made by somebody who doesn't have a whole lot of sexual maturity, but who thinks that they do, and so they're making a game based on their ideas, but their ideas are no different than, like, a 14-year-old's ideas of what maturity is. So, Yandere Simulator is to sex what hatred is to firearms and, like, weaponry, essentially, where it's just kinda like immature, and it shows in everything that it does, on top of the erotic game paradox. So again, I could be entirely wrong about this. I admit this isn't like one of my deeper dives into something like this, and that's because I just don't really get it. But I was thinking about, like, I was like looking into it, and I realized that nobody was really talking about this concept, but they were talking, like, they talked about him, and they talked about, you know, the game itself and why the game is bad, and I didn't see anyone just kind of sit down and say the specific concept of the game doesn't work because of this paradox. The entirety of the game doesn't work. The very core idea fails because of the paradox, because you can be porn, you can be a game, but you can't really be both without one side either being like intrusive or unneeded. There's no way to balance the two. So that's my take on Yandere Simulator and the erotic game paradox. It might just be that it's not for me. It might just be that I'm asexual, but yeah, I just don't have much to say about it. I just felt that I needed to say something because it was bothering me that no one seemed to bring this concept up. So, yeah. See y'all next time.